we are joined by the amazing Kelli K Naturopath right now for one of these.
Wellness Wednesdays on The Takeover. Brought to you by station sponsor Kelli K Naturopath. Book your free intro call today at kellik.com.au.
Kelli, how are you?
I'm very well, thank you. How are you?
Doing well, thank you. Doing well. We were just chatting with you off air about feeling a little bit tired. It's daylight savings returning back to the old system or not daylight savings, whatever it is. It's a little bit like it messes with you a little bit.
Can do, yeah. It's a little bit strange. Still adjusting.
We are adjusting, we are. But so good to have you on the show tonight. And we are talking about something that I think even if we don't realise it, impacts all of us, and that is chemical exposure. A really interesting topic for Wellness Wednesday tonight, and we are going to just sort of jump straight in.
Yeah, so, as Maz just said, we're going to be talking about chemical exposure, and so I guess the first question we want to ask is, what are environmental chemicals?
Yeah, well, these are just synthetic products or chemicals that have been made in a lab that are used for various reasons, can be quite useful, but that we become exposed to in the environment around us.
Oh, okay.
Okay. So what are some examples of those, Kelli? Like, would it, be like plastic and things like that, or is it even things that we can't necessarily actually see in the atmosphere?
Yeah, a bit of both. So plastics is the big one. So chemicals leaching from plastics. Food can be a big one as well. So pesticides and things that come off conventional produce. Body care and personal care items as well. Lots of toxic chemicals can be in those products as well. And then, of course, you've got things like, exhaust fumes and those types of things where you can't really escape unless you're way out in the country somewhere out of civilization.
Yeah, it's just crazy how I guess that's our lives, really. That's the reality of it, is you can't go anywhere without being exposed.
Yeah, and I think
we can't escape it, no.
Yeah.
It's so easy to not even notice.
Yeah.
And so as you were just explaining what these are, why are they such a concern and why do we need to be worried about it?
Yeah, I think we don't need to be worried. Like, we have to be careful about not, becoming so stressed about chemicals that, now we're completely stressed and anxious about all the things in our home and in our environment. But we do need to pay attention and do what we can to reduce our exposure because they do have some health concerns. It's estimated, there was some research done a while ago that most women will apply close to 160 different chemicals onto their body just through their personal care products, through their shampoos and conditioners, makeup, that type of thing, which is pretty crazy.
Yeah.
And our body has to deal with all of that. So all of that has to be processed through our liver, kidney, and be excreted through our body somehow. And it's a huge burden for us. And there's a lot of conditions now, or there's more and more sort of concern or research around how these chemicals might affect our health long term. A lot looking at fertility and how it impacts pregnancies and fertility, and also thyroid health is another big one as well. So the thyroid's very vulnerable to, those environmental toxins as well, and perhaps some neurological issues as well that are becoming more concerning.
Yeah, wow.
So, and of course the rise in cancer as well. So a number of chemicals are, classed as carcinogens, which is a huge concern. And what makes it, I suppose, so tricky is that these chemicals are being produced and released into production and manufacturing so quickly that there's no time. They don't go through the proper rigorous safety protocols or safety testing that they should. So it's really hard to know, and because there's so many of them, the true effect that they're having on our health.
Yeah. It's kind of scary, but I think there is hope in this conversation. I think that we're going to take a quick break. And Kelli, tell me that we are going to talk about how we can live low tox lives and, have less exposure to these chemicals? Because I do believe that there are things that we can do to help ourselves when it comes to being exposed to these chemicals. So we're going to chat about that straight after Imagine Dragons right now on Life FM. Don't go anywhere. More Wellness Wednesday straight after this. And we're joined by Kelli K, Naturopath, for Wellness Wednesdays, talking about chemicals in the environment, chemicals around us, and reducing our exposure to these chemicals. And it's been a really interesting discussion so far, Kelli, because we've been talking about some of those examples of chemicals that are in our environment, but also why they're concerning. But now we want to ask you another question.
Yeah, so another question is, who is most at risk of these adverse effects from chemical exposure?
Yeah, well, probably it's no surprise that sort of pregnant women, lactating women, children, the type of people are most at risk, I would say. And also people who suffer from thyroid disorders as well, or who are more elderly as well. They will be more at risk of having sort of some serious adverse reactions in terms of chemicals, but it's one of those slow things. So anyone, depending on their genetics and their detoxification capacity and all sorts of different things, and I suppose people who work in industries where they're exposed to a lot of chemicals as well, that's going to be a big one.
Yeah, okay. And what are some of your top tips, Kelli, for reducing our chemical exposure?
Yeah, okay. Well, the biggest tip, the overarching tip, is focus on what you can control and what you can manage. So like you said before, it can be quite scary and overwhelming when you do see the data and when you realise how ubiquitous it is. But focus on what you can control. So things within your home, in your household, so cleaning products, try and move to more natural cleaning, or using just water and vinegar, those types of things. And the same with your personal care products. Try and move to products that have a more natural base, that are at least eliminating some of the more toxic components. And I would say do this one by, don't try and clear out your whole bathroom cabinet all at once and replace it all at once, but just when you run out of your deodorant, when you run out of your shampoo, go and buy something that's a bit different, that's a little bit more natural. The other big one was, if you can, aim to eat organic as much as possible. And there's a really great list, because I know not everyone can afford to or has access to the full range of organic produce, but there's a great thing called the Dirty Dozen and the Clean 15. If you Google that, it will tell you the fruits and vegetables that contain the most pesticides during their growing. So you can at least eat partially organic and choose to replace those really heavily sprayed items with organic if you can.
Okay.
Another one would be not using plastic to heat your food. So don't microwave things in plastic containers. Don't you put Glad wrap over things that are hot, because that heat can really leach some of those phthalates and some of those BPA and different chemicals out of the plastics and into your food.
Wow, that's a big one.
So avoid doing that. Yeah, it is a big one. And plastic water bottles as well, leave them in a hot car in the sun and then people reuse them. They're really not, particularly the disposable ones, really not designed to be reused. So just be cautious around that.
Holly and I were having a chat earlier about my first world problem with choosing a new drink bottle. Because they call them emotional support bottles these days, because that's what they essentially are. Like, people buy them more as a fashion item and an accessory. But there's so many nice ones out there that are stainless steel or glass. Would you suggest that over plastic drink bottles?
Yeah, I would. Yeah, if you can.
Yeah.
Grab the stainless steel or the glass if it's possible. It can be a bit tricky with kids, because you don't want them to throw their bag down and then shatter their bottle or dent their bottle. But at least if you have to buy plastic, try and buy really good quality, BPA free, phthalate free. That's hard to say. Plastic bottles. For sure.
Okay.
Yep.
Okay. Did you have some
and
more
airing
tips? Yeah.
furniture is another one.
Okay.
So if you're buying new furniture, so new couches, new bed mattresses, those types of things, try and air it out with there's lots of ventilation. Leave it a few days if you can, ideally outside if it's not going to get rained on and destroyed. But yeah, so that you can let some of those chemicals
be released.
Dissipate. That's the word I'm looking for.
That's so interesting. I'd never heard of that before. Yeah, that's a great tip. Okay.
That would be my key tips.
Yeah. Some really good tips there, Kelli. Thank you so much for joining us. We are actually going to do a part 2 of this chat as well in a couple of weeks' time. So I am very keen for that. I think that one we're going to focus a little bit more on vaping and, other substances and those kinds of chemical ways that chemicals can enter our bodies and that sort of thing. So we're going to chat about it from that sort of perspective, but it's still going to be really interesting. And thank you so much for your top tips and your advice tonight. We will try and share some of that over on our Instagram account, Life FM Adelaide, over the next couple of days as well. So keep an eye out for that. But Kelli K, Naturopath, thank you so much.
Thank you.
Wellness Wednesdays on The Takeover, brought to you by station sponsor Kelli K Naturopath. Book your free intro call today at kellik.com.au.